All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. It's an Inside the Command Center Friday. Get us all ready for the big game this weekend. My buddy Louis T is back on the show. What's happening, my friend?
We are so excited. I can't tell you how excited I am about this playoff game. It is, I feel like, a long time coming to be able to bask in a 12-win season, to be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor as fans, and to be able to see the beginning of what I think is going to be a really beautiful relationship between Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and Jayden Daniels, and just watching this thing develop. Man, this is exciting.
Louis, there's a chance they could get Executive of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year. It's just incredible to think of how many swings they had to take. Like, not just swings at trying to get it right over the years. I just mean this year, of all the things they've had to replace and fix, to have pretty much all of them coming up burgundy is really just incredible.
Indeed. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, every single button that they've pressed has been the right button. I mean,
Yes.
think about the hiring of Adam Peters. So remember, let's go all the way back to the very beginning. They put together a committee to find their next general manager. And we were kind of like, a basketball guy? Like, right? Like, we're kind of a little bit baffled by it, but obviously it turned out to be the right decision. They knew Josh. I think Josh Harris had done his homework. He knew, what guys were going to do a good job, and there was a relationship previous that was there as well in terms of Adam Peters, and Bob Myers. So I think he knew what he was doing and the pieces of the puzzle he was trying to put together. And then you go from there, and we were all, and I think we've had this conversation before about Dan Quinn's hire. We weren't over the moon about that.
No.
We all wanted Ben Johnson and the new shiny toy, whether it's Bobby Slowick or Mike McDonald or somebody else. We didn't want to retread though, and that turned out to be the right move. Right, that was another right button that they pressed. And then from Lance Newmark in the front office, along with the rest of the people that they put in house, to all of the coaches that they've hired. It's just been one move after the other. I mean, even down to trading for a kicker for a 7th-round pick, him not working out in week 1, getting rid of him, and then signing Austin Seibert. And even though he had the Dallas miss, obviously, he was magnificent for us.
Yes, he was.
I mean, he won a game for us. The first week he was here against the Giants, 7 field goals. So every button, from Noah Brown to and we're waiting, I think, a little bit here for the dividends to be paid on the Marshawn Lattimore deal. But even if he doesn't do anything else, he was a huge part of that win against Philadelphia, the second time around. So I just think everything that they've done has been the right move thus far.
I had just gotten through talking with a Bucks reporter right before I got on with you.
Yeah.
And I think it was like 4 catches for 40 yards is what Mike Evans averages against Marshawn Lattimore. So, like, just having him out on the field Sunday is huge because your guy, Mike Davis, damn sure ain't doing it.
I deserve that. I definitely deserve that. I thought he was going to be good, Doug.
I know you told me.
Really
I was all bought in with you. I was telling other people, I was like, yeah, he got to be jacked up.
I'm ashamed of myself. I really am disappointed in what Mike Davis has brought to the table. He's been horrible, and I couldn't have imagined that he would be this bad this season. But such is life. You live and you learn. And Chargers fans tried to warn me, and I didn't want to listen. And so a wise woman once told me, "Those who don't hear feel." So unfortunately, I had to feel. So I deserve that one.
The other thing, Louis, that I think doesn't get talked about enough is the way that they have prepared the staff for the future.
Yep.
Right? Like, very intentional. Same thing with guys like Lance Newmark. Like, they know, and they'll have to add more to that room. I mean, think about it, it's just 1 year under Adam Peters. They're going to fill out that front office.
Yep.
vastly by the time we get back to another season of football. But particularly when it goes to the staff, I think Dan Quinn, one of the things I'm sure he learned about in Atlanta, what remember, because those were good offensive coordinators he had. I just don't think he had any succession plans, knowing that
Right.
Kyle Shanahan was going to obviously get another job and that who knew what was going to happen with Sark.
Mhm,
So you can see here that they are ready
mhm.
for whenever it is,
Yep,
if it ever is, that Cliff leaves with
yep.
guys like Brian Johnson and
Mhm,
Peter Pritchard
mhm,
and Blau one day. I mean,
mhm,
really, this coaching group on offense in particular, and defense too, but
mhm.
offense, I think, is what more people are worried about. They've set themselves up to be productive for a while.
Listen to what you just said, Doug. Listen to all the things that you just said. Think about that and just let that sink in for a second.
Yes.
I said this on my show, I think it was a couple of nights ago. The last time we had a coach hired from our organization and given a promotion, okay, whether that's a defensive line coach becoming a defensive coordinator, or a defensive backs coach, or a wide receiver coach becoming an offensive coordinator, or offensive coordinator becoming a head coach, et cetera, was 2016 when Sean McVay went to the Rams. Like,
Incredible.
just think about that for a second. Like, we don't have, we haven't had, I should say, prior to this regime, we haven't had the development. You know, they didn't bring in good coaches. They didn't bring in coaches that were sought after around the league. It didn't matter how well we thought we were playing here. It didn't resonate around the league. And the last time we had an offense even remotely close to the one we have now is 2016. And again, that was the last time we had coaches pulled from our organization and given a promotion elsewhere. So it is phenomenal the way that they've built everything. And I think that is something that gets lost in the Dan Quinn conversation, is he learned so much from that first go round.
Yeah.
And one of the things you just pointed to and highlighted very eloquently is that he wasn't prepared. There was no succession plan
Mhm.
when those guys got hired. And that was part of his downfall in Atlanta. And he is prepared this time around, all the way around. And, you know, I think even to the defensive side, if something were to happen with Joe Witt, I think he's grooming Daryl Tapp or someone of that ilk to be ready to step in and become the defensive coordinator if we get to that, you know, bridge down the road. And so I think the staff that he's put together, I remember when this thing was being assembled, I was like, man, this is an all-star cast of coaches here.
Yeah. Didn't even mention Anthony Lynn.
Anthony Lynn is another guy that's called plays before in this league. Ken Norton has called plays in this league as a defensive coordinator before. So again, I just think he's put himself in a position where no matter what happens, you have to be prepared for success. You have to
Yes.
be prepared for success. Expect it, embrace it, and understand that when it comes, people are going to come knocking on your door wanting to poach play coaches from your staff, front office guys from your staff as well. And you have to be prepared for that. We were never prepared for success here. Now we have a staff and an organization that seems to be prepared for success.
Yeah, it sounds like if Ben Johnson goes to a place that doesn't have a GM or has enough power to get said GM removed, he'd like to take Lance Newmark with
Yeah,
him. So that's just like guys are going to be leaving the
yeah,
organization,
that's right.
which, by the way, Louis, is a good thing.
That's right. Absolutely. It means that you're being successful,
That's
and
right.
that's what you want, right? That's what you're
That's
aiming for.
let's see. 18 weeks ago, this team played against each other, not even remotely the same teams on either side of the ball that we'll see. I asked the guy, I asked JC Allen in the last segment. I'll ask you the same question. What is the biggest difference between that team and this team?
Jayden Daniels, without
Yes.
question. He was bright-eyed, right? First start. I mean, everybody always like, but I think it's an apt, you know, thing to bring up. But his first passing attempt of his NFL career was
A little dead.
was awful, right? He threw the ball backwards 110 miles an hour at Brian Robinson Jr. For like a 15-yard loss. And it just, we've come so far from that game where his first inclination was, you know, one read and run, take off and go,
Mhm.
right? Like he wasn't staying in the pocket. He wasn't looking to throw the football if it wasn't open right away. Um, he was taking off. And Cliff Kingsbury even said this at his presser yesterday. He didn't know what Jayden was then. He didn't know what this team was. He didn't know what the players around him were capable of. He didn't know what to call, right? Like
Right.
we were in the infant stages of this recalibration, as they like to call it. And so when you look at the night and day drastic change from week 1 to where we are now, that offense is unrecognizable. Jayden Daniels has morphed into one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the NFC East or the NFC, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as a
Incredible.
whole. And, you know, the talent around him hasn't changed much since week 1, but it's how they're deploying that talent now that has changed so drastically since the week 1 contest. I just think it's a totally different offense than the one that they saw in week 1. And Cliff Kingsbury is way more comfortable with, you know, the pieces that he has and what Jayden is capable of, and how to put Jayden and the players that he has at his disposal in positions to succeed.
You mentioned Jayden is the obvious one to go to.
Mhm.
He's been so much better, Louis, than I could have even imagined. The stats are astronomical, and I saw today, and I forget who to give credit for, but he had put up a nice post about it. In the last 2 minutes of the game, they basically lead in every statistical category and efficiency and EPA and all of the numbers. That's not coaching, that's not play design. That's a dude that doesn't like to lose football games, and you can see it. You can tell that he loves playing the game and that he hates losing, and that's my kind of guy.
Right. And I think the biggest complaint that most Commanders fans or then Redskins fans had was Kirk Cousins wasn't clutch, which I didn't necessarily 100% agree with. But look, there were enough instances of him not getting it done that if that's the narrative you wanted to run with, you had supporting, evidence of that. Jayden Daniels is the direct opposite. Like, if there's one thing that you can't say about him, it's that he in clutch, because that's when he shows up and is at his best. When his best is required, he delivers almost every single time. And I, like you, Doug, I didn't expect him to be this good, especially not this fast. Even if there at one point he would become this, I would have said, yeah, maybe 3-4 years down the road he might become this good. But to see this in year 1 manifest the way that it has, I said this in the moment. That Cincinnati Bengals Monday night game changed everything.
Yep.
It changed everything because we saw a star be born that night. And as the season progressed, and the Hail Mary, the Eagles touchdown late, the Atlanta Falcons drive, all of the things he's done,
Cowboys, I mean, every game
everything. The
is the
Cowboys
second half of the
throw to
season.
Terry. I saw a post that you had that said the forgotten touchdown, right? Because we didn't win the
Brutal.
game and the extra point didn't get made. And so people forget about that 86 yard. That was a dot,
It
like in the
was.
perfect spot in stride. So he didn't have to stop or break stride because he would have got caught. If anything was off there, he doesn't score, but it was in the perfect spot, took him up the field inside those Cowboy defenders, and the rest is history. He's been so clutch so many times that we just expect it. I can tell you this, Doug, watching that Sunday night game against Atlanta was the most calm I've ever been in a big time
Right.
pressure situation, because I'm like, we're not losing this game. Jayden Daniels is going to win us this game. And even though Olamide Zaccheaus didn't catch that third down pass and we were able to get to overtime, I never felt like we were going to lose because we got 5.
It's
And
crazy.
and it's just a different feeling, Doug. It just is.
I say I mainly watch the games with my wife, and I tell her all the time on Sundays, like it is odd to have one of them dudes back
Yeah,
there
yeah.
that you can just say, go make it happen, kid. And,
Right.
and every time you're betting on 5.
Yep.
And it's just wild. It doesn't feel, it feels like we've been waiting a long time for some nice things and we deserved them. And
Yes.
I've appreciated, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but you can tell that the players, particularly some of the ones that might have just gotten here, can really feel the fan base's appreciation
Yeah.
for what this team is doing this year. And you can feel it. I mean, the fans, this, the fans have been hungry for something nice for a long time, and they're getting it, and they are in turn giving it back to the players tenfold.
Mhm.
That to me has been one of the greatest things of the season.
And I think the best player to give you a full perspective of that is Tress Way. I don't know
That's
if you
right.
caught wind of what he said the other day, but he said that Sunday night game against Atlanta was one of the best environments he's ever seen being
Yeah.
here in Washington. And he said that it felt really good to kind of come full circle to see how the organization, and he won't badmouth the organization even when Rivera was here, or
Yeah.
he won't badmouth anybody. He's like, I've made too many friends, they've been too good to me. But he said that environment on Sunday night was the best environment, and he's like, it really made him smile to see how far this team, this organization, but this fan base has come because of Jayden Daniels and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and all that they've brought, this excitement that they've brought back to the DMV. It's incredible.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think, set a record for the amount of rushing yards they had. Both backs got 1,000 yards. I think the third down back got 500 yards on the season. Um, They're two Pro Bowlers on the defense for the Commanders, and yet still cannot seem to stop the run game. What are they going to have to do on Sunday? Because I got to tell you, Bucky Irving scares me in this game.
So I am actually a little bit more confident that we'll be able to stop the run. And don't ask me exactly why, but I'll say this: Marshawn Lattimore's presence allows you to do a little bit more
That's true.
with your defense. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, if you feel like you got to bring that extra safety up, you can feel a little bit more comfortable doing that because you have Marshawn Lattimore. But I think they've found something with Deron Payne being put at defensive end and, going with that 3 defensive tackle look if they have to. I know that's not the ideal situation because you don't get as much pass rush when you do that. So I just think because of how the Bucs, this is why I think we'll have a chance to stop them. The first time we played Tampa Bay, they gashed us late in that game, if you recall, with some big runs.
Mhm.
But we were playing a one gap penetrating type of defense at that time. At the very beginning, you remember we were getting up the field, we just weren't getting to the ball carrier.
Right.
And so because we were getting pierced so badly in the run game with that style, they went more to a 2 gap where, okay, you hold up a blocker, you play both gaps and see where the ball carrier is going. And I think because the Bucs, like the Falcons run game and how they scheme it up, they run a lot of inside, outside zone. That scared me a lot more because we are terrible on the C and the D gaps on the outside. A lot of our big runs that we give up are off that C gap or the D gap on the outside. We've been talking crack replacement all season long. We don't do a good job of it, and we don't stay in our gaps. We don't fill them properly. And if you think about a lot of the big runs we've given up this season, the DeAndre Swift run, that's up the sideline. The Saquon Barkley run in the second quarter or the first quarter of the second game, outside run, right? And you think about a lot of the yards that the Falcons got outside. And so the Bucs have more of a gap scheme. It's a lot of powered counters, sort of like us, but they get under center with theirs. And it's a more slow developing run game. And I feel like if we can just do the things that we need to do, be physical at the point of attack downhill. I love that Jordan McGee's coming back because if the Bucs want to get into some formations that allow us to put a third linebacker on the field. McGee, before he got injured,
Yeah.
he was attacking downhill.
Yeah.
I loved him in the Saints game, early in the Eagles game. He was attacking downhill. And I think he adds another element there as well. So I think we can stop their run game if we are physical at the point of attack. If guys get off blocks, shed blocks, and get to the ball carrier and tackle. I think we can stop the run. But Bucky Irving should scare you. He's been on a tear here of late. And another thing that killed us the first time was the screen game, right?
Yes.
They annihilated us with the screen game. We have to be better because I still am not necessarily pleased with our screen game defense. I think when the corners come up and are aggressive, the screen game defense is outstanding, but if they don't make a play initially, feel like we can be gashing the screen game. And the Bucks run a ton of screens in a variety of ways, very creative with their screen game. And that does worry me as well.
Commanders started out the season using a lot of that pony personnel, with the two running backs on each side of the quarterback. And Eckler goes down, and they kind of switch the way that they're running the ball. They've been terrible at running the ball the last quarter of the season. How do they fix that for Sunday?
And that's a great point. I've been advocating for them to go kind of back to that pony look where you just have so much more that the defense has to account for, right? It feels like they've gone basic with the run game where it's just, read option. Jayden, either give it to B-Rob or you keep it, right? Like they still have guys running around and, in ghost motion and things of that nature. But, I thought the first Eagles game was the apex of that pony backfield look where they hid Eckler so well. They threw it to him out of the backfield. They were able to hand it to him. They did screens off of that. There's misdirection that you can do with that. One back's going this way, the other back's going that way. They don't know which back's getting the football. And they just stopped doing that. And you didn't have to have Austin Eckler to perform that. You could have put in, Jeremy McNichols, or you could have put in some other back and continued to do that. They just stopped for whatever reason. I think when it's all said and done, they have to get back to the basics of running the football. Like everybody just do your job, be physical at the point of attack. Like Brian Robinson Jr. has to get downhill. I think he's been a little bit hesitant.
Brian Robinson Jr., Louis?
You said have I ever
do we overvalue Brian Robinson Jr.?
I don't think so. I think he's a really good back, and I think he needs a compliment. I think because I think we're missing that speed element, right? I think most of us as fans are very envious of teams like Buffalo and Detroit who have, a back like a James Cook or a Jahmyr Gibbs where, it's a home run threat every time they touch it. And we lack that. And so I think he's a hammer. Like Detroit still has David Montgomery, and that's what Brian Robinson Jr. can be for us. But we need that compliment to him. And so I value Brian Robinson Jr. And yes, this has been a rough patch for him, but it's not just him. It's the offensive line. It's the play calling. It's a combination of all of those things. But to your point, we just got to get back to the basics, be physical, be more physical than the team across from us at the line of scrimmage. And he's got to be more decisive. I think he's been a little hesitant here of late, hitting holes and getting up the field. One of the things we love about him is his punishing running style, where he gets yards after contact. And usually the first guy doesn't bring him down. But when he's running east and west instead of north, that's the problem. And a lot of his runs here of late have been going sideways before he even gets to square his shoulders to the line of scrimmage. He needs to be going downhill immediately. If you're going to press the hole, press it on some outside zone type runs where he can then stick his foot in the ground and get up the field and use that power to get 2-3 extra yards after contact like we're accustomed to seeing.
If I had told you this, if I had told myself this before the season started, I think I would have chuckled. Dyami Brown is a priority free agent, isn't he? I mean, you got to bring this guy back, particularly with how they use him in this particular offense.
Yeah, if Cliff Kingsbury is back, and I think even to the point that we've made that even if Cliff isn't back, and I only think there's one job that he'd take, and that's Chicago, right? And if that situation is ideal for him, and if I were him, I'd still even be debating whether I want to go there. That's not a well-run organization right now. But if Cliff is back, I think Dyami is a priority. Even if he's not, though, because of how we've set it up, and the next guy up, you would hope would value what Dyami brings to the table. Clearly, we saw this with Jahan Dotson being shipped off. They value physicality in the run game and blocking, wide receiver screens, things of that nature. You got to be able to block. Well, he's our best wide receiver screen run after catch guy, right? And I said this when Noah Brown went down. I said, I did the pros and the cons of Noah Brown going down. And I said, one of the biggest pros that you get is you get a true vertical threat opposite of Terry McLaurin, because we would throw deep balls to Noah Brown. He'd never win, right? He'd get pass interference a few times. He's the only one that's drawn any pass interference penalties down the field, but he never won any of those one-on-one matchups. Dyami has shown the ability to win those one-on-one matchups, whether it's Cleveland with the touchdown. He had a big one against Philadelphia from our own end zone. He's shown the ability to get vertical. He had an opportunity against Dallas on Sunday, and Jayden just underthrew him right on a deep corner. So he's shown the ability to get vertical. He's been our best wide receiver screen guy. I like his toughness. I like his ability with the ball in his hands. We don't have a lot of run after catch guys. Like,
No.
He's one of the few on this team. So I think he's carved out a niche for himself here in Washington. And like you said, him and John Bates are guys that I think are probably priority free agents coming back next year.
People will probably roll their eyes when you say John Bates,
Mhm.
but it's hard to explain with stats and numbers how important
Mhm.
a blocking tight end is,
Yep.
and he may be one of the top 5 best tight end, blocking tight ends
Yep.
in the league, and I don't
Mhm.
say that just because I'm a John Bates stan.
Yep.
He's been fantastic.
That's right.
It won't be talked about enough. We talk about it all the time on this show because I feel confident and strong about it.
Mhm.
One of the biggest things they've been missing and they will be getting back is Tyler Biadasz.
Mhm.
He's been fantastic.
Mhm.
I could have never imagined he'd have been that good when we signed him. I mean, think about how much time they're in gun, Louis.
Mhm.
And you don't ever see the ball flying anywhere. He's
Mhm.
also does a lot with the check department. Getting him back for Sunday to me is one of the biggest things they've got going.
You could argue after Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, he's the most
I
important
have.
piece of this offense. Without question, he's the most important piece of the offensive line because we don't have bookend tackles.
Yeah.
So his involvement in the offense is massive. And I think there's like one play that kind of highlights his importance. And it was like the first third down of the Dallas game on Sunday. They singled up, and it's not a good idea to single up anybody, especially on the interior of the offensive line against, Michael Parsons one-on-one. But Michael Dieter somehow drew that assignment, and he just blew right by him and sacked Jayden Daniels. And you're like, why would you do that? But, when Biadasz isn't in there, it just looks different, right? It just looks different. It feels different. Like you said, there have been snaps that are kind of funky, right, when he's not in there. But I think we lose a level of physicality, communication up front. And it feels like when he's out there, that offensive line is kind of on a string. Like they're all in unison and firing off the ball. When he's not, it just feels a little bit clunky and disjointed. And he makes such a massive difference up front. And he will, and this is one of those games where you need him because Vita Vea is on the other side of that line of scrimmage. And much like Jalen Carter, he can wreck a game if you allow him to. So that is a welcome sight and a sight for sore eyes if you're a Commanders fan, Biadasz being back under center.
If you're a fan of blitzing, this is the game for you. Both teams, I think, are in the top 5 in blitz rate. It should be exciting that way. It feels like heavy blitzing at this point in the season favors Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I think you're going to see less blitzing from Tampa in this game
Right.
because they understand who they're dealing with. They blitzed him a ton in that week 1 contest because he was a newbie. You could blitz him and get away with it because he didn't know any better. You knew you were going to have his head spinning, and they took advantage of that. But having seen him now, and I do think Todd Bowles is going to pick his spots. I'm not telling you that they're not going to blitz at all. I think they're going to pick their spots because if you catch Jayden off guard with the blitz, you can get him. But if he sees it coming, you're in trouble. And the Bucks, I can tell you, having watched them over the last 3 years, in particular with Bowles, as either their head coach or defensive coordinator, they've struggled with mobile quarterbacks, particularly Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar got him for 40 points this year on a Monday night. They struggled with him the year before. And I know that you have to be careful when you're playing a mobile quarterback such as a Lamar Jackson or a Jayden Daniels, because if you're too aggressive and you don't get to him, it could be game over, right?
Yep.
So I think you're going to see Todd Bowles be very selective in when he does decide to bring pressure. They're going to try to confuse him with different looks to make him think pressure's coming, maybe get him to slide the line the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. But when it's all said and done, I don't think you're going to see him be as aggressive. I remember last year, the Buccaneers played against the Eagles in Wild Card Weekend,
Yes.
and they covered zero blitzed Jalen Hurts to death in that game, and they had no answers. The Eagles had no answer. I can't foresee that being the game plan this week against Jayden Daniels.
No, I can't. And Cliff already said they will make sure that he's got outlets to get
Yeah.
through there. Louis, I've got the underdog fantasy pulled up. I thought maybe we'd look through some of these over under props and
Okay.
see what you like.
Okay.
The over under passing yards for Jayden Daniels is 228.5.
I would take I think I would take the under on that slightly. I think he's going to be like at 226 or something like that. That's where he's been this season, 227. That's a good number they put it at, because that's normally right where he lives. We average 216 yards a game passing. So he's usually in that 215 to 227 range. So that's a good number. I wouldn't be shocked if he surpasses that, but I think if they have it their way, it'll be a balanced attack where we're able to run it and he's able to throw it. And so I'll go under that total slightly.
They have the pass and rush yards combined at 289.5, which means my quick math on the fly is what, 61.5 rushing yards. What just from the rushing standpoint, what are you thinking there? Big
Yeah,
rush day for him or no?
yeah, I think it's going to have to be, because
Yeah.
the Buccaneers don't give up yards on the ground to running backs. So
No,
if
they
you're
don't.
going to run the ball, it's going to have to be Jayden Daniels with his legs. And I don't think they're a particularly athletic defense. Like Dallas gives us fits because they're a very athletic defense. They can fly around, they're fast, and it's hard for him to escape. That's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
No.
So if he's able to break contain like he did the first game, I think he had over 80 yards rushing that first game. I mean, not much has changed in that department. Maybe they respect his speed a little bit more now that they've seen it, but I just think his legs are going to be huge, as they've been pretty much down the home stretch of the season.
Does it frustrate you that he won't throw the ball away on the sideline?
I
It's nitpicking. I understand that
yeah,
nobody's
yeah,
perfect, but
yeah.
does it drive you as crazy as it drives me? Like, just flick the ball away. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It drives me nuts. I can't stand that, because a number of times it's a 2 or 3 yard loss when he does that. You know what I mean?
Or
Even if
even
it's a
if it's a
1 yard.
one-yard loss, it's
Yeah,
a sack against the offensive line. It sucks
right.
for those guys. They got to be pissed.
Yeah, I
Maybe not
don't
pissed.
understand the so somebody said maybe it's completion percentage that he's protecting, and I'm like, I don't
2
know if he's
incompletions a game's tough.
I don't know if he's thinking about that while he's running. I just don't think
I hope not.
I just don't think he's throwing it away, which I don't understand why he wouldn't be coached to do that. Like, once you get out of the pocket, and if you're thinking about jaunting out of bounds and you're not past the line of scrimmage, then just throw it out of bounds, right? Just throw it away. That does drive me nuts too.
Okay. 4.5 receptions for Terry. This is about the average. We look at these each week. 4.5 is interesting. It always feels like he's going to go way over, and rarely does he go over 6 or 7 catches. And usually there's only like 2 or 3, and you know
Right.
this until the end,
Right.
and then they start chucking him the rock.
Right.
4.5 receptions for Terry.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the over on that, because at a bare minimum, he's gonna have 5 catches in this game. At a bare minimum. And I get that you're absolutely spot on. You're thinking, man, that's a low number. And then he has 4 catches, right? That's normally how it goes. But I think in order for us to have the type of success we want in this game, we have to target Terry, because the Bucks don't have a dynamic number one corner. And I think when you get into those situations where you gotta have it, I think Terry is a guy. He showed it at the end of the Cowboys game. If you have to have it, you can go to him and he can get it done for you. And so that's not lost on this staff. And I believe that Terry will be heavily involved in the game plan this week. And I can see him with at least 6 or 7 catches.
Zach Ertz is on an incredible tear. They've got to bring him back next year, right?
I think
You moving on from Ertz? I mean, he's been really good this year.
I don't think they are. And I think part of the reason is that you got so many other things that you need to take care of. If
Yeah.
you can just take tight end off the list for one more year by bringing back Bates and just bringing back the whole crew, and they really like Colson Yankoff as well.
Mhm.
Just bring back the entire group, and then you don't have to worry about tight end for one more year. Obviously, as fans, we want a more athletically gifted tight end, somebody that can be a difference maker from, a catch and run standpoint, separation, all of that good stuff. But Ertz, like you said, has been cash money in some big spots down in the red zone on third downs. He's the second leading pass catcher and yardage guy on the team, touchdowns as well. So
6 touchdowns in the last 4 games, something like that, right?
yeah,
It's just the run he's always been crazy.
yeah,
Does he score a touchdown this week?
yeah. I think when we get down there, there's only a handful of guys that are going to score. It's either going to be Zach Ertz, Terry McLaurin, or Olamide Zaccheaus. If it's not one of those three, then it's Jayden Daniels or one of the running backs. So it's not you're not going to get like Luke McCaffrey out of nowhere score a touchdown, or Ben Sinnott, sneak in the game and get a catch or something like that. So, or it could be Jamison Crowder, but more likely than not, it's one of those three. And he's looking for Ertz. He's looking for Terry down there. So yeah, I'd say yeah.
Did we expect too much out of some of the rookies in year one? I think of Luke McCaffrey. Everybody was waiting each week for a Luke McCaffrey breakout season. I mean, listen, he was a late round draft pick that's only played wide receiver for a couple of years. Did we ask for too much? And I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on Ben Sinnott. The usage has been odd. They are not using him anything remotely close to the way they used him at K-State. Again, I'll leave it up to the professionals and assume they have a plan. But I think those two guys had been the biggest surprise to the fan base, at least.
I would even throw Johnny Newton in there as well. Now,
He's got to put on weight. He gets shoved around a bunch.
yeah, I would even say that some of his play could be chalked up to missing a huge chunk of camp due to the surgery he was coming off of, et cetera, et cetera. But he just hasn't been what we thought he was going to be really either. So it's early. I don't really like to get on guys about a lack of production early in their careers, because everyone comes along at their own rate, right? But as far as Sinnott is concerned, I've had conversations with people about him all year, because a lot of fans are upset that they spent the second round pick on this guy. And I'm like, they envision him. And look, you have to listen when people talk. Adam Peters envisions him being sort of a Kyle Juszczyk type of player, right? He called him a hybrid of Juszczyk and George Kittle. And I think he's more Juszczyk than he is George Kittle. But we wouldn't know if he is, because they're not throwing him the football. We're not giving him a chance to show what he can do as a pass catcher. So there could be evolution there. I still think they're trying to figure out, where he fits. And guess what? He's behind the veteran that you just said is playing really well, right? And then John Bates is your second tight end because he blocks better than most NFL tight ends. So there really isn't a way for him to get on the field. It's not that dissimilar from, a young player on an NBA roster where, they're sending these guys down to the G League because just then there aren't any minutes for you, right?
Yeah.
We got veteran players that have established roles, and you're just not ready to contribute yet. Now, I kind of look at him in that particular setting, and similar to Luke McCaffrey, I get it. This is not a great receiving core, and so with that said, you expect a guy like him to be able to get on the field and have an impact. He's been open, right? He hasn't gotten the ball. He's had opportunities where Jaden's thrown him the ball, and they weren't the best thrown footballs. You think about the 2 interceptions against Philadelphia; they were both passes intended for Luke McCaffrey, right? So his biggest catch of the season was an interception. That ball wasn't intended for him against Cleveland or Cincinnati. He took that ball away from Noah Brown and caught it and ran it down to the 1. So I think that he's going to continue to develop. And I don't know what people's expectations are for him and as to what they expect him to be, but understand that he's a third round pick. This is his third year playing wide receiver ever, and he's continuing to develop. And so as he continues to come along, there will be an expanded role for him. But don't look at him as some second, receiver on a team. He's probably a third or fourth option at best, even when he gets to the apex of who he is as an NFL player. So maybe there was a little bit more put on those guys because of the lack. And I always say this, especially at receiver in particular, when you don't have anything and you draft a receiver, so much is put on that receiver by the fan base. We've done it so many times, whether it was Antonio Gandy Golden, who wasn't ready to contribute, but we had nothing at receiver. So we're looking at this, fourth round pick and saying, what are you doing, man? Right. It happens all the time, and I think that's what's kind of happening to Luke right now.
Fowler, Wagner, Chin, all on 1-year deals. You bringing all 3 of them back?
Yeah. The one of that group that I would say may have the chance to not be back would be Chin of that group. I
Really?
think all of them are, candidates to be brought back, but Chin is a good fit and he's done really good things. And I think they really appreciate his physicality and his ability to run and cover tight ends and things of that nature. But he may have a market too,
Yeah,
and depending on what he is able to command out there versus what they're willing to pay him, if he's looking, he could say to himself, I found a home here. I want to stay here. Right. But if he's looking to test the market and try to cash in, which I would assume that's what he's going to try and do, there may be suitors out there that have seen him in this scheme and say, you know what, he could really benefit us. And there could be some, big money for him out there. The other two, Fowler's not leaving Dan Quinn's side.
right.
So
Yeah.
he's going to be back. If Quinn wants him back and he wants to be back, he'll be back. And Wagner, same deal. Like, I think he's found a home here to finish his career. And I think he'll be back next year as well.
The over-under is 50.5. You like the over or the under?
Oh yes, that's man, what's crazy is that's an immediate over. Yeah, over. And when you think you find out you have no idea, right? This is the highest point over under total of the entire wild card weekend.
Mhm.
And I find it hard to believe that these teams changed their stripes and all of a sudden are playing incredible defense in the playoffs. Yeah, that 50 feels like a over for me.
The Bucks have averaged 454 yards of offense since Mike Evans got back.
Mm,
The Commanders are averaging 29 points a game. It's hard to not see
yeah,
the 50.5 being an
right.
easy bet.
Yeah.
It's all the spread's 3. What knowing that you like the over,
Mhm,
the spread is 3.
mhm.
What do you like for the score on Sunday?
um, this feels like a high 20s, low 30s type of affair, right? This feels 29, 27-ish, 30, 27, 33, 29, something along those lines. It feels like a game played in the high 20s, low 30s. And maybe the first to 30 wins the game type of deal. If anybody makes it there, the first to 30 might win the game. That's what it kind of, the vibes it gives me. Um, I think I had predicted somewhere in the 29, 27. I hate needing to rely on Zane Gonzalez for anything, but we may have to rely on Zane Gonzalez for a walk-off field goal or something along those lines. Every time we play the Bucks in the postseason, it's usually very, very close. This
Yes.
is the fourth time we played them all time in the postseason. And outside of the 2020 matchup, all of them have been, decided by 5 points or less, if I'm not mistaken. So um, this feels like another one of those games that falls kind of in line with that. And um, yeah, I think it's going to be something along the lines of 29, 27, something like that.
Do you believe in teams of destiny, and is this one of them?
I do. I do believe that there are teams that the ball is just bouncing their way. It just feels right. Now, this team in particular, normally when I have that feeling about a team, they're usually generating turnovers, right? Because
Right, yeah.
that's the great equalizer, I always call it. And we don't generate turnovers. And the only thing that would make me still say that this could feel like a team of destiny is all the late game finishes with us. I call it the Washington walk off or the bear trap or whatever you want to call it against
Miracle in
Chicago.
Maryland.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. That was crazy. The obviously we didn't win the Dallas game, but just the fact that we were able to even get to a point where we could tie that game up was insane. To beat Philadelphia with 5 turnovers. Only 2 teams have won games this season where they've turned the ball over 5 times, Detroit and us. To beat the Falcons in the fashion, like to have their kicker not be able to make the 56-yarder at the end of regulation, and then us get the ball and drive it down. The Saints game on the 2-point conversion. It just feels like everything has kind of fallen in our favor. And if you're you're a believer of fate and a team of destiny, this kind of feels like it.
Louis, we've been waiting a long time for this.
Yeah.
We've earned it.
Yes.
Please enjoy it on
Yes.
Sunday. Thank you so much. Always love talking ball with you, buddy.
Hey, no doubt. And for anybody out there, I'm having a watch party in Richmond at the city's bar and grill.
Okay.
If you want to come out, watch the game with us, I'll be streaming live as well. But we're gonna have a great time, and I expect to be celebrating a win. So I've already said that no matter what happens, it's a celebration, right? Either we're celebrating a win and moving on to the divisional round, or we're celebrating a hell of a first season under Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and company. So either way, it's going to be a celebration. And if you're not doing anything, you're not watching the game in any particular place, feel free to come out and join us.
Post that watch party, and I'll retweet it.
We'll do.
Okay. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, no doubt. Thanks, Doug. Take care. Hey, raise hell.
Raise hell. We're gonna raise some hell on
That's
Sunday,
right.
buddy.
That's right.